Why does Star Wars create new things? That is to say, unnecessary new vehicles, trooper types, ships, etc. Star Wars has developed a bit of a habit for creating new military vehicles and trooper variants that don't justify their existences within the universe. I'm not arguing that every new vehicle or trooper type is bad. A redundant vehicle can still make sense if it serves a narrative purpose, represents or reflects bureaucratic excess, or expands the setting in a meaningful way. My issue is when Star Wars creates something new despite already having an existing vehicle or trooper type that could perform the exact same role. The obvious first response to why Star Wars does this is merchandising. But I don't think that explains this phenomenon in its entirety. Star Wars has always focused on merchandise. An article by Barker Brettle, a very prominent UK law firm, speaks about how during the production of A New Hope, George Lucas agreed to have his director's salary reduced to 30% of the original $500,000. In return, he would maintain all rights for sequels and, most importantly, merchandise. Since then, merchandise has always played the largest role in the profitability of Star Wars. Star Wars currently has the Guinness World Record for most profitable film merchandising company, and in 2012 it was estimated by Guinness and Lucasfilm that Star Wars had earned over $20 billion in merchandising, excluding games, while more recent estimates have put that number around or over 40 million. Star Wars consistently pulls in around $1 billion worth of merchandise every year, and to produce new products, there needs to be new subjects to make these products off of, which brings me to my first example of Star Wars creating unnecessary new things. The Mandolorian and Grogu being the most recent Star Wars film seems like a prudent case, especially since The Mandalorian and Grogu were both made to produce toys. Star Wars marketing really focused on the Imperial Remnant AT-RT driver. For me, seeing that two Lego sets and a Hasbro Black Series figure focused on a trooper type who was on screen for roughly 10 seconds was shocking. Looking at the aforementioned AT-RT driver, what makes this trooper type special? What justifies their new armor set? What sets them apart from, a scout trooper? The tasks dedicated to scout troopers are the same ones you would expect an AT-RT driver to have. AT-RT literally means all-terrain reconnaissance transport. And what's the primary purpose of a scout trooper? Well, reconnaissance, of course. Cold weather assault scout trooper variants did exist within the Galactic Empire's Stormtrooper Corps, and they were used to great effect during the Battle of Hoth in 3 ABY. If you want a more detailed report on this specific instance, after I finished my first draft, I stumbled across a video by a channel called SoupTrooper, which covers a lot of the same points I am now. I will have it in the description. Director Tony Gilroy, VFX supervisor Mohan Leo, and production designer Luke Hull were responsible for the creation of the majority of new things in Andor. The Fondor Hullcraft was, according to Leo, heavily inspired by the classic 007 Aston Martin. And in that case, I don't have a problem. New civilian craft don't need to justify their own existence like military crafts and units do. Nobody is regulating the creation of those. Just like in the real world, there are different manufacturers and brands, and each of them create their own lineup of, in this case, ships. However, in real-world militaries, the justification for creation of new vehicles is based on a capability gap. A new vehicle has to fill a gap that exists. Obviously, that's a very simplified version of events. I just finished writing an academic paper on the creation and continued use of littoral combat ships, and I am well aware that there are so many factors that play into ship creation. Politics, contractor influence, price, And yes, many military vehicles in the real world are redundant, where there are multiple vehicles in use across a military that have the same role. But we don't need to complicate Star Wars without reason. Like I mentioned, a director or writer can add a vehicle that's redundant if they want to justify the redundancy for the plot, or make it a symbol of the bureaucracy that the Empire certainly has. But making something for the sake of making something that's just unnecessary is a waste. Andor created a ton of new Imperial vehicles, some that provide use cases not seen in other Imperial vehicles, such as the IBT 2921 from Season 1 or the Imperial Omnibot from Season 2. Being an Imperial anti-personnel heavy weapons platform and military ambulance, respectively. However, there are a few other vehicles created for Andor that fill a role that didn't need to be filled. Originally, I was going to spend a lot more time trying to go over every single instance of this I could think of, but for the sake of time, I'm going to cut most of those out and just cover a couple of the most notable ones for me, and ignore any of them that I think are partially justified. So, in Season 2, the ISB uses two troop transports. First is a repulsor lift transport for ISB agents and stormtroopers. The second is a dedicated ship for ISB tactical agents, known as the ISB TAC Shuttle. Starting with the former, while I originally thought it could have its role replaced by the LAAT/IE police gunship, I have recently realized when reviewing the footage that it actually appears in, that it's actually a lot larger than I thought. A then better version of this ship could have been the Imperial dropship used in The Mandalorian Season 2. With this size lining up a lot better with this unidentified Imperial transport, I actually think that with an ISB-themed paint job similar to the original transport, that this dropship could work perfectly for the ISB in Andor. The ISB TAC Shuttle was created as a specialized transport for the Imperial Security Bureau's tactical agents, the equivalent of a SWAT transport in the real world, according to Tony Gilroy. The look was heavily based on those trucks. As you can see, they share much of the same design language. Based on the aesthetics, it does fit the look of a SWAT truck. However, aesthetics don't really matter past getting the audience to figure out what the real-life equivalent would be, something the ISB tactical agents already do themselves. What I'm saying is, it doesn't really matter if this new ship looks like a SWAT truck. That doesn't justify its creation. There have been a number of various reasons people have put forth as to why this ship exists and how it differs from another vessel that looks very similar to it, the Lambda-class shuttle. The main logic behind the ISB getting fancy new transports is something that originates from the old expanded universe. Looking at the Legends Star Wars novel Allegiance by Timothy Zahn, we see a group of stormtroopers discuss the ISB's heavily upgraded custom civilian transports. One, named Quiller, or TKR-2014, TKR is notably different from TK here, says when discussing the Imperial Stormtrooper Corps, "We may be the Empire's finest, but you never know when the ISB gets up from the budget table." End quote. It seems like Tony Gilroy has adopted this treatment of the ISB's influence, where the ISB gets fancy new vehicles unique to them because they're the Imperial Security Bureau. But why couldn't the Lambda fit this role? The Lambda shuttle was created as a luxury transport for high-ranking Imperial officials, originally not even for officials as high-ranking as captains. However, it largely became a mainstream Imperial vessel, and also happened to become a popular troop transport, despite its original creation as, again, a luxury shuttle. So, if the ISB wanted a fancy craft to carry around their forces, the Lambda would work. But maybe it's a size thing. The Lambda shuttle does have a very wide wingspan of 32.7 meters, and the TAC shuttle is, while thicker, less wide, and its size is overall smaller, comparing total crew and passenger count. We go from the Lambda's 24 to 18 in the TAC shuttle. We don't know a lot about the TAC shuttle, but the Lambda would have likely lacked much of the surveillance and technological capabilities of the TAC shuttle. But I doubt that the ISB couldn't have just refurbished it. The TAC shuttle also likely has a small prisoner bay due to the fact they were trying to literally capture a prisoner. But a personal prisoner transport variant of the Lambda did exist, and once you add in the new surveillance monitoring equipment and the prisoner capability to a Lambda, it would theoretically make the interior space closer in scale for both shuttles. Modifications could also deal with the extra wingspan on the Lambda. If you just remove a few feet from the fin and wings on each side, I don't think it would be too unrealistic compared to other things in Star Wars. Maybe I'm just in the headspace of critiquing new additions to the Galactic Empire because A, as a LEGO army builder, that means more stuff for me to buy, and because also, again, I've been working on this 12-page academic essay on the continued use of littoral combat ships, which has definitely gotten me in the headspace of just trying to justify every creation and really just tear down real-world vessels. I assure you that essay is much more well-written and put together than this. One of the more important things, though, I do want to emphasize is every vessel and vehicle and trooper type does have to be new at first before it can prove itself as a necessary part of the universe. So, once we have more overall examples of these ships and troopers being used, it won't really be an issue that they're around. It's more just the act of creating something new, to me, has problems. But the opposite of this phenomenon can also occur, and it's amazing when it does. In Andor, there have been examples where we have gotten callbacks to older vehicles. For example, we get to see a modified Imperial dropship from Mando Season 2 get subbed in as a Imperial prisoner transport on Narkina 5. The TIE Advance prototype also briefly appears in the show as well. That's the type of attention to detail that allows me to look past some of the smaller vehicle additions I consider unnecessary and what sets Andor apart from other Star Wars TV shows. The Jedi games, in my opinion, do this best. My favorite examples are with the LAAT IE and TIE Reapers used by the Inquisitorius, because while of course the Inquisitorius in this game could have gotten their own transports for Purge Troopers, they didn't need to since other ships fit that use case perfectly. And again, the Inquisitorius being in direct conflict with the ISB honestly feels symbolic for this video. The ISB created these new transports they didn't need, while the Inquisitorius just used stuff that already existed. Please let me know why you disagree with me in the comments. Thank you so much for 1,000 subscribers. And with that, I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. And if it's late at night, go to sleep, please. Thank you.